Hi, my name is Kyle Koller, and this is my genre Triptych PowerPoint for Dr. Rink's Introduction to Humanities class. I did my genre Triptych on film. I chose film because it is one of the most popular art forms in today's culture, and also I chose it over another popular art form like music because film doesn't take as much prior knowledge of the processes and ways of making it to be able to recognize movements in it, and I just feel like it's easier to notice movements in film because there's such a shift in the way things are done and just how everything looks. The first movement of film I recognized was the French Impressionism. This movement occurred during the 1920s in France. I chose French Impressionism because it created lots of new methods used in movies ever since its creation. These are such as point-of-view storytelling, as well as non-linear editing. They also experimented with new camera works and ways to shoot movies. This era in film was just really influential in producing new ideas that many filmmakers and films throughout the rest of time will be using, and ways to tell stories. The film I chose for this one was The Seashell and the Clergyman, which was directed by Germain Dulac in 1928. The Seashell and the Clergyman was about a priest lusting after a woman, which was highly controversial, and it was a film that was considered experimental because it had a darker subject matter that was considered controversial to many of the films seen at the time. The next film movement I chose was the New Hollywood movement of the 1970s. I chose this movement because it was incredibly influential in shaping the movies and blockbusters seen today. And you see, as the example movie I chose, Star Wars, it was a huge change of pace from many of the movies seen at the time. The movie studios were trying to reach out to a younger crowd, and this led to names like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg coming to fame with their hit movies. This movement was created by young directors who had been growing up watching movies on TV and had just been able to study movies in their home because of the availability of them because of television and cable. Doing this led them to have a much greater appreciation for many of the techniques used to create films, so they were able to create movies with the combination of these techniques that they learned growing up, and it led to films that were not only blockbuster successes for the younger generation, but influenced movies for the next 50 years and on. A huge development in the 1970s that helped majorly to create these new types of films was the creation of the 35mm film. These films were a lot easier to create, and they could also be shot outside, so studios would not have to make sets for everything they needed to do, and they could be a much wider array of sets, and you could really showcase a lot of different scenarios that you could with creating sets. The film I chose for the New Hollywood movement was Star Wars: A New Hope, which was created in 1977 and directed by George Lucas. I chose this film because this exemplifies the movement very well, with a huge blockbuster success geared towards young people to get them back into the theaters using new techniques that had never been seen in film. And to this day, this film and its sequels have been the most successful movie franchise of all time, and it's thanks to the techniques and styles of this era. The next film movement I chose was the Australian New Wave, which was a renaissance of Australian film in the 1970s. This era was defined by the Ausploitation, which is the exploitation of Australian area and culture. Unlike the other film movements I recognized, Australian New Wave did not have a set style or even characteristics of film that all the films have. Rather, it was just a mass of hundreds of films coming out of Australia in the 1970s, which many of these are considered to be some of the greatest films ever created. One of these is Mad Max, which was created in 1979 by one of the most famous directors to come out of Australian New Wave, George Lucas. Now, this really showcased the grime that you can find in Australia and the deserts, but some of the other films showcase some of the beauty of some of the landscapes, while the characteristic that all films share is that they showcase some part of Australia, be it the culture or the area. Here are my sources. And thank you for watching my slideshow. And again, I was Kyle Koller, and this was my genre Triptych presentation for Dr. Rink's Introduction to Humanities course. Thank you.